You're listening to a Roddenberry podcast.
It's Monday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern. You've got your eyes glued to the screen because it can only be Mission Log Live. I'm John Champion.
And I'm Holly Amos. Here we are again, gathered online to talk Trek with our Star Trek pals. That's you. While you talk to your Star Trek pals, that's us. Tonight, we're talking to Brandon Rodriguez from NASA JPL's Education Department. He's an education specialist providing resources and training to K through 12 schools across California. He also has a very interesting personal background and is a huge Trekkie. Some of you actually who have attended Star Trek Las Vegas might have already crossed paths with him. He was there doing children's programming for a few years in a row. So you're especially going to want to call in tonight if you're a teacher or parent looking to further your kids' interest in STEM.
I love that. I mean, look, people should call in anyway, but that is a great reason to call in. So come one, come all, give us a call. You know how you do it. You click on the Zoom meeting link, or you use the one tap from your smartphone, or you call us at 699-900-6833 and enter the meeting code and password you see on the screen. Earl will say hi. He will pass you along to us, and we will all chat with Brandon. And by the way, I'm just going to say, I was watching some videos, reading some interviews, kind of getting a little education on what Brandon does, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation. So many questions came up, so many interesting topics. So before we get to what is happening in Mission Log World and meet Brandon, let's say hello to folks who are chatting with us right now live. There's Paul 1, there's Paul 2, and then I like that Bob, your dad, hi
Dad.
Holly's dad,
Hi,
is
Mom.
saying hi to the Pauls. So all full circle right there. Cindy checked in just to say that she has to go to sleep. So, Cindy, I hope you enjoy the show tomorrow and the shout out, and I hope you had a good sleep. And then let's see, there's Dominic. Dominic wants to know why we're not talking about episode 4 of Prodigy tonight. No, but it's good. Okay, so you know what to do. You go get Mission Log Prodigy for that. Let's see here. There's Matthew. I'm going to talk about Matthew here in a second. A couple of Pauls. Paul saying hello to Bob, to me, and to Dom. And I imagine you. Yeah, cool. Yeah, okay, there we go. Just making sure everybody's covered. We got Carlos. We got Willie. Hey, Mr. Willie. Awesome. Speaking of STLV and your standbys for STLV. There's Alan. There's Rick. Let's see who else is there. There's Dave. At least Dave 1. Probably going to get a Dave 2 at some point. Matthew, Corey. So many people there saying hi. So good to see you all. Thank you for joining us as you do. And again, you know what to do. You pick up the phone, you tap on the link, you join us, and you say hi. So before we get to our guest, let me tell all of you what is happening on Mission Log and our other associated podcasts. So Mission Log Live next week, Disco is back.
Yay!
Season 4 of Discovery starts, and I won't be on next week. I thought I was going to be, but actually Norm's going to step in, and then we'll alternate a bit, and then when we get back to Prodigy, it'll probably be more of me and you. But we're going to talk about Discovery, and I can't wait. Very excited to see the changes that have occurred for Season 4. Kobayashi Maru is the name of the episode that they're kicking off with. Wow. It's a bit of Star Trek lore there, clearly. So I look forward to watching you and Norm cover that next week. And then let's see here. On Mission Log, regular Mission Log, DS9. Ooh, here we go. Enter Arma Enim Silent Legis. That
Very
will be
good.
Thank you. I've said it so many times. I can say that, but I still have trouble with Bellerophon. Yes.
I don't even know what you're saying.
That's the name of the ship in Inter Arma Enim Silent Legis. Yeah. I believe me, I get it so wrong so many times. So that'll be dropping on Thursday. Tomorrow night, Norman and I will be recording Till Death Do Us Part, and you can get those early recordings through our Patreon and join us for live weekly chat on each episode in the Mission Log Discord. Let's see, I mentioned it last week. Let's mention it again. LA Comic-Con coming up December 3rd through the 5th at the LA Convention Center downtown. I will be there on Saturday the 4th, hanging out with so many Trek people. So come by and say hi. Also, I didn't mention last week, if you happen to be going to San Diego for the mini Comic-Con, the Comic-Con Light happening the weekend after Thanksgiving, a few people that you know, Larry Nemechek, Dr. Trek, Rod Roddenberry, and some of the Roddenberry team will be down there to celebrate the opening of the new Comic-Con museum. So check that out. And as always, as I've been telling you now, catch up with our new shows. You got Mission Log Engage. That's me and Norman answering our hate mail. And
That's a good way to put it.
It's not really hate. I mean, people take us to task sometimes, and wisely so, but it's just kind of fun. Like, it depends, depending on the mail, like some will really get me worked up and Norman will have to talk me down. But then today, Norman was really worked about something and kept texting me. And I was like, no, you just gotta talk it through. It'll be fine. All about IDIC here, different points of view, different opinions. Okay. So check out Mission Log Engage on the Roddenberry YouTube channel, and then Mission Log Prodigy and Mission Log the Orville, dedicated shows talking about the morals, meanings, messages in both of those series. So much fun. There's the audio component you can find at podcast.roddenberry.com, but you can go watch the videos of those podcasts on the Roddenberry YouTube page. And by the way, Holly, I mentioned Matthew a moment ago, who is in the chat. You know who Matthew? Yeah, Matthew Corey, right? Does that name ring a bell? You know who that is, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know who he is.
Yeah, he's the guy who wrote the pitch that became True Q when he was 17 years old.
He was a child.
Yeah, right. And he's got a book right now on Amazon called Q Me, My Star Trek Stories. So go check it out. He's been a guest on our show before. And special shout out because tomorrow is his birthday. And tomorrow,
how old is he turning?
It's the Star Trek birthday. He's 47.
47!
Yes. So congratulations and happy birthday to Matthew Corey. So everybody go look up his book, Q Me, and you get the behind the scenes. I love that it's not just his journey writing that. He includes his original draft script in the book.
Love that
so
stuff.
From the words of a 17-year-old, they got him a gig writing on Star Trek. I love that. Well, they bought his pitch. So that's pretty
it's
cool.
impressive as a
It is.
17-year-old.
More than I ever did at 17. I'll tell you that right now. So, all right, folks. So glad to see you all here. Welcome again to the show. And let's jump right into it. Let us welcome our guest, Matthew Rodriguez. What? I said Matthew. I did. Oh my God, Brandon. I mean, come on. I said Matthew 900 times. Brandon, can I call you Matthew? Are we close enough that I can call you Matthew?
I didn't do as much at 17, so now I'm feeling.
I don't believe you. I'm going to say you're pretty well accomplished, but it didn't start at 17.
Took a little bit of a slow burn to get into it.
Okay, got it. Well, look, here's the first thing I want to do, because we're going to talk about NASA JPL. We're going to talk about STEM. We're going to talk about education. We're going to talk about all this cool stuff that you're into. But I think the thing that I want right now is I want to hear your Star Trek story. I want to hear about your fandom and what brought you into this world of science fiction before you got into science fact.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think I have a similar story to so many others. But in a way, I think that's what made Star Trek great, is that it's not wildly unique that I fell in love with TNG being a child of the 80s and kind of saw a narrative of hope and kind of goodwill and the philosophy around it, right? That kind of captured me. Obviously, the world of the season finale was also a big part of it, being stuck for a summer waiting to see what happened next. It's true, I really wasn't interested in science pre-TNG, but then TNG came along, DS9 shaped me even more so, and really just kind of fell in love with this idea of space exploration. And it didn't really speak to me as a career, it spoke to me as like a method. It spoke to me as a philosophy, saying, I want to be part of exploration. I want to be part of the process.
That makes sense. So your earliest, you grew up on TNG primarily. Yeah. And so that's the stuff that kind of shaped your fan. And then as a young fan, did you find yourself like going to conventions or sort of like getting that dedicated in your fandom, that immersed in your fandom, or did that come later?
Yeah, that came much later in the fandom side. I had gone to probably really the only thing I had done before starting to attend STLV just a few years ago was I had been to Star Trek: The Experience in Las Vegas when it was still around, which is just incredible.
Right on.
And I had gone to a Comic-Con in Austin for the 25th anniversary of TNG. So it was pretty sporadic. My fandom was much more local. It was with like-minded friends who wanted to get together and watch and talk and reenact all of our crazy parts that we loved so much.
And what was the education background? But what led you there into, like, were you in scientific fields or education? What was it?
Yeah, it was a pretty wild gear shift for sure. One that I still think about a lot. I had a career in science as a research scientist. I'm a chemist by trade and was working for a very large chemical company, the Dow Chemical Company. And I really enjoyed it. I loved my career in science, truly. I was treated very well. So many doors open to see the world and travel and experience how other cultures do science. Again, kind of tying back to this idea of exploration that we saw in early Trek. But at some point, I kind of just started to think to myself, I'd become more interested in sharing science and discussing science than doing science. And that kind of led me into a career in teaching. That was supposed to be a pit stop. So that kind of, I left the company and a decent paycheck to become a high school chemistry teacher in Houston, Texas at the time. But I enjoyed it so much more, to be honest. It's just so much more rewarding. And I was very lucky to have NASA reach out and say, there's a career path for you that will allow you to do both. You can still be a scientist, you can still work in education. And that kind of got me into where I am now.
Well, but wait, how does that happen? Just you're going along, you're teaching, and then one day NASA, Bobby NASA shows up and says, I assume there's a guy at NASA named Bobby who's got his eye on, up and coming teachers, is like, come do this thing with us.
Yeah, old Timmy J NASA.
Yeah, TJ NASA. I'm a big fan of his work.
Yeah. I actually never really ascertained how it came to pass, but a colleague of a colleague had effectively passed along my resume.
Now it's starting a little weird, like they've had their eye on you. You didn't know it.
Yeah, it's a very kind of hidden in the underdark kind of. But it was pretty wild. And I mean, I got a phone call in the parking lot of the school, and I was certain it was a prank phone call, right? Like, sure it is. Yeah, sure it's NASA. Let's talk more. Sure. As true to their word, they said, come fly out to Pasadena and come meet with us. And I couldn't get on the plane fast enough.
And it was legit. It didn't turn into an episode of the X-Files. So good. I'm glad to hear that.
Right. Still around.
Yes. Good. All right. So that's, see, here's where I'm really interested in what that is. And we're going to get into the topical stuff here because in a very short, like I watched your TEDx video, which is maybe like, 12, 15 minutes long, something like that. And you covered so much in that. And I thought so well to the perfect audience to hear it. So, you've gone to do all these things, but what is that at JPL? Like, what is the job description at JPL that says, guess what? You get to go talk about science things. Yeah,
it truly is the dream gig, right? I hate to gloat, right? But I love the job. When you think about what NASA does, everyone thinks space, which is obviously correct to some degree, but I think we don't respect enough that NASA engages science, right? So if you can imagine, when you walk down the street, you don't see a lot of T-shirts with other, branches of the government on it. No one has a IRS shirt on, right? Or postal service, right? You wear a NASA logo. You can go into any department store and buy a NASA logo shirt. So NASA has done something very, very well, which is to communicate science to the public. And that is enough to inspire, even if they don't know much more than a logo or maybe a few missions. Everyone seems to know what NASA does and believe in NASA and believe in that message. And I think that's what they really do well. And I mean, to go to your question directly, that's why they have me. That's why they have people like me. And they say, social media is one thing, you know, the website is one thing, but how are you going to get kids interested in science? How are you going to tell children, hey, there is a career in STEM for you, and you don't know it yet. You might not believe it, but you too could work on NASA. You could be part of these missions. So it's really important to kind of capture them young and be able to kind of get that inspiration early before they fall out of love with science.
And here's where it sounds like that mission and what you hear a lot about what Star Trek has done in the popular culture kind of start to come together. I'm not under any illusions that Star Trek was a show that was created to push people into science, but it couldn't help that by showing this world where it was this extrapolation, this ideation of what comes from an investment in science, space exploration, that's where you end up. That's where you get to go if you do these things and make good decisions along the way. So that's where these things start to come together. I want to jump over to our first caller, who is patiently standing by, as always, with Tendi in the background. Here's Paul. Paul, welcome to the show. How are you doing tonight?
Hello.
Hey, good to see you. What is on your mind this evening?
Hey, it's just good to see everybody. I want to thank Brandon for his work, and John and Holly, it's always great to see you.
Likewise.
Brandon, I too was a chemist, except I just got the job and stayed there 37 years at General Motors. And, you know, a lot of our activity on Bring Your Child to Work Day was focused on what you do. We used to set up experiments and have the children of the workers come in, and we do some magnificent experiments. We did the hot water in liquid nitrogen and blew up, stuff all over. And then we did the standard chemical ones you see, like making various chemical safe things. The what do they call it today? Slime, I guess. That's always a favorite.
Nice.
But I wonder, are you focused on any particular age groups? And how do you go about, there's so many ways that kids are inundated with stuff. How do you go about doing this?
Yeah, so the first part is we really focus on the K-12 window. I'm very, very fortunate to have such an awesome team. Really, we have a core of 3 people who are ex-scientists, ex-teachers. And their teaching background is in elementary school and middle school. I'm a high school teacher. As such, I feel like we can really kind of speak to each other's expertise. And because we all have scientific backgrounds, we really understand the content, but we're able to translate it to the age groups we're trying to reach as well, right? As I'm sure you know, working at GM, like everyone thinks that their scientific background somehow makes them qualified to speak to kids, right? And granted, many scientists go out and do great outreach. However, many do really, really bad work. And it's really funny to me. Every once in a while, I bump into someone at JPL who says something along the lines of, "Oh, I've got my doctorate in astrophysics. How hard can it be?" Okay, good luck standing in front of 150 eighth graders, right, and seeing what happens. So you really have to have both sides to be able to effectively engage the kids and not just get them excited, but get them learning, right? These kind of like career day things are awesome, and guest visits are awesome. But it takes relationships, right? It really takes prolonged time to get the kids to trust, to believe, to be able to really have discourse with you. And I think that's what we really focus on, is that we don't just want to be, as you said, like everyone's being inundated with information. We don't want to just be a post that they like or a video that they watch. We want to be face to face. We want to have a conversation. We want to tell them about our careers, options for them, and paths forward through college and beyond. If you don't have that, then in a lot of ways you're a flash in the pan, right? Your name is forgotten by the time you leave. So we really try to make it substantial and build relationships with students.
So along that line also, I fully appreciate what you said, having tutored a few people through their graduate or their undergrad theses. That was hard enough, but reaching out and touching, emotionally and scientifically getting into the minds of an eighth grader to get them going in the right paths. You stumble across that one who just gets it immediately, but they're like 1 in 100 or 1 in whatever happens to wander by.
Sure.
Really, what you said is absolutely on the point, in my experience. Have you been able to partner with any of the major STEM kind of companies, like even a company like Lego or, a building corporation or a chemical, manufacturer that is interested in helping you along?
Yeah, absolutely. There was actually a Lego partnership with NASA, and there have been several others as well. Obviously, we align with a lot of the teacher professional development conferences as well. So you'll very readily see us at things like the National Science Teachers Association and so forth. But as great as those are, as much value as I think those bring for my team as well as for the participants, there is a degree of abstraction when you go to a company, to the company's employees, to the teachers, to the students. Right? That pipeline is so long that you say, how much of this really trickles down to the kids? So in that regard, really, we try to work more closely with teachers and students because we're able to see, yes, we're going to implement this. Yes, we're going to make this part of our curriculum to be sure that these kids are going to get jazzed about science, not, oh, you're one talk that I went to at a conference of hundreds of others, and now I have too much information, and we'll get there eventually. We don't want to be sitting on the shelf. We really want to be in the room and really working directly with kids. And
one final note, I was just thinking, bouncing this around my head, assembling a group of local young scientists and maybe getting together for their local Comic-Con, maybe an avenue that I don't know if you've pursued or not, but there's a lot of interesting opportunities at conventions. Not necessarily things as big as STLV, but, much smaller local ones. If you could get a group of those kids together and, help them teach other kids, that may be an avenue, which I've seen sporadically just here or there. But I just want to thank you for your work. And looking forward, as a child of the 60s, I got to grow up through all of it, watch Man on the Moon, then watch Star Trek first, then Man on the Moon, and, later Star Treks and the whole deal. And now I'm got a cartoon character over my shoulder. So we're full circle here, but thank you so much for your work. And John and Holly, as always, it's great to see you. And what a magnificent guest you have tonight. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, thank you so much. Appreciate it. Till next time. Guys. Yeah, all right. Cheers. By the way, Carlos asked you in the chat, does Brandon need any interns? I don't know if he's volunteering himself or knows people who might be a good fit. So
JPL does have interns, don't they?
Yeah, so JPL does hire, and this is just JPL, one of 10 NASA centers. JPL hires hundreds of interns every year, hundreds. So there are so many opportunities. The vast majority of these are for, college students with degrees in science, because we really will take young kids and say, hey, let's program, let's use your computer science abilities and get you to write code for the rover for this mission. So there are real fantastic internship opportunities at JPL. If you're not, really hard into the physical sciences or computer science and stuff like that, we have internships for you too. We hire artists, we hire educators. So, talking about what NASA does well in terms of engaging the public, every picture you see or every article you read was written by a journalist, was designed by an artist. So those are the kind of jobs in STEM as well that are really, really exciting and I think could really make a big impact. So definitely, please reach out. JPL internships, if you Google that, you'll see an application page.
Hey, look at that. Very cool. Also in the chat, noting, going back to the conversation you just had with Paul, Lego and NASA head explodes. Okay. Yes, I'm very pleased. Somebody just gave me the Lego Saturn V
oh my
model.
God.
Very excited about that.
The Saturn V is so pretty.
It's gorgeous, right? That's
The
one of
most beautiful launch vehicle. I think I've said that on this show before.
I think you have too. Although my friends gave it to me in sub-assemblies, like they already put it together and then they broke apart the piece. I'm like, but now I've got to go through and take it all apart. So I have the satisfaction of putting it back together so I can say that it is my work, There's
a small set too. I can't remember if I still have it. I know I have this shuttle right here.
Let's see. Yes.
So I have the old original. Oops, I shot out.
Oh, cool.
We'll get him or her back. But they also have it's a small set, but it's like the women of NASA set too.
Yes.
Really cool.
Right. That is a very cool one. Glad that they did. Oh, and now Dave's saying, oh, now I need to get that Lego Saturn V. So yeah, maybe so. I do want to, there's so much that just came up in that last conversation that I might hit on. And what Paul was getting at, which I think is the real challenge for somebody in your position, is that I feel like there is popularly this sort of dismissal of science as being something esoteric, difficult, detached from everyday experience. And yet this is the attitude carried by people who walk around with very highly advanced communication devices in their pockets, and they interact with things all day long that are the product of science. And I'm wondering how easy or how difficult it is to bridge that gap, to meet people who maybe think that this is out of their reach, think that this is out of their normal everyday experience, but say, no, that this actually is science, is you living your life and interacting with the things around you. What do you do there?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. And certainly I sometimes, in my more pessimistic moments, worry that we're not going the right direction on this. You mentioned a certain ambivalence towards science, which to me is better when I see kind of an animosity towards it. That scares me even more. When you have a fear about, being tracked, it's like, well, you have a cell phone. You've been tracked for a long time, right? Every time I mention something near my phone, every single ad that pops up is what I was talking about verbatim. So science is already advanced. It's already around us. I'm sad that so many people don't want to harness that. And you mentioned kind of earlier, isn't that what Trek kind of pitched to us, is look what we could do if we understood it, if we could grasp it. And to kind of circle back to what I was saying, when we first started, for me, what I just wish the public knew and what I wish students knew is that science is not a content. It's not, you don't have to be an engineer. You don't have to be a chemist. I don't want everyone to major in science. That's too many scientists. That's the nerdiest world we could ever imagine. I don't want this. But I want us to partake in the process. I want us to understand the methodology. When you see something that looks fishy, I wish we could better say, that looks a little weird, right? Not like, oh, that's a miracle, or, oh, we're in the Matrix, right? Like we so quickly resign to not understanding, and that's unfortunate. I think we can really hone critical thinking skills in the science classroom, for example, and then say, if you never become a scientist, that's fine, but you'll always think like one, and that's good enough.
Well, that is exactly what I want to hit on when we come back here. I'm just going to take a minute because this is the perfect place to kind of pause here and just remind people who are watching this or hearing this the next day or later in the week, you know what to do. Go over to patreon.com/missionlog, because not only is there swag, not only are there the preview shows and exclusives, you get the Mission Log Discord. And honestly, that is the best conversation about topics raised by Trek and other science fiction and pop culture, and just a great community hangout for everybody who listens in to Mission Log and carries on that conversation with me and Norman and the whole crew. So patreon.com/missionlog for as little as $1 a month. And honestly, it's less than that because we give you a discount if you sign up for the year. Join us over at patreon.com/missionlog. Be a part of the Mission Log exclusive Discord.
Which I'm on now.
Which you're on now, yes, and it's
Yay.
awesome. And every Thursday afternoon, because, Mission Log drops Thursdays at 12 a.m. Pacific, every Thursday afternoon, we're in there talking about that day's episode of Mission Log and the episode of Star Trek that we covered. So come hang out. It is awesome. It is loads of fun. And we'll see you there. All right, you know what to do. You click the thing and follow us. Do it. All right, Brandon. We were just talking about what I think is so utterly important and so utterly frustrating at the same time about science education and sort of the position of scientific discourse and understanding in the world today. And you see it on the level of students, but you also see it in the popular media as it is discussed among adults and politicians and in our news media, how scientific topics are covered. And, here we had Paul on a moment ago who was talking about working as a chemist at GM. You were a chemist working at Dow, correct? Yep. And I feel like it is so much easier for a narrative to catch on where people can walk around just sort of feeling very informed by saying, Dow is evil, Monsanto is evil, they did this one thing that was terrible, therefore all of scientific inquiry in that direction or from that company is to be untrusted and we have to throw it out. And I feel like that's what you're up against. And it is so much easier for people to walk around with that feeling like they are informed when in fact it is completely the opposite. And you've got quite the hill to climb to try to turn that perception around. Where do you even begin?
Yeah, I think one of the, you phrased it so well. One of the kind of silos I try to draw around these discussions is distinguishing a scientific discussion from a moral discussion. Mm-hmm. So if you said, Brandon, you should have never worked at Dow because they make plastics and plastics pollute the ocean, I would say, wow, in retrospect, I really didn't understand plastic pollution. And now that really does give me pause. But if you said, Brandon, you should never work at Dow because plastic doesn't exist, it's a conspiracy, now you're a crazy person, right? So the scientific discussion is around how we make plastic, how do polymers work, how do catalysts work, right? This kind of language. And no one seems to argue that. Without, again, becoming kind of a loon, right? Mm-hmm. Same thing. I have friends that work at Exxon, and even they might feel, should I be kind of putting forward a petrochemical kind of lifestyle that is harming our environment? That's up to them. And I will sit with those people and I will say, let's have an ethical conversation about what we should do. But when you question science, now we have a problem. Science exists. Science doesn't care what you believe. Science is purely a process of thinking and matter of fact and exploration. It is not biased by what your lifestyle or what your personal beliefs kind of bring with it. Climate change truly is the perfect example, right? Climate change is not up for scientific debate anymore. It's obviously up for political debate because it's still something we're talking about, but it is done. The science is over. We packed that up and we're already leaving town. Climate change is real. But the fact that we still talk about it, we're not talking about science anymore. So it just helps to frame these things and be able to say to people, what kind of conversation do you want to have? And are you willing to change your mind? If you're not willing to change your mind, this is not a scientific discussion, and there's no reason for us to even get started, really. Thanks for telling me that I shouldn't waste my time. If you want to have an ethical discussion, I can sit here and pour a drink and chat with you all day. But we need to know what kind of talk we're having first.
I think that's one of the most challenging things that I find now is that not only are there people that are, dead set, but they're not open-minded either. So you can't have you just can't have a conversation with them. It's pointless because it's not going to get anywhere. You're still going to be divided on the subject.
Yeah, communicating across
frustrating.
paradigms, right, is
Yeah.
now the hardest thing to do. And it felt like not long ago that I could disagree with someone. We would say, let's go grab dinner now. Like the conversation's over. Whereas now it's that Venn diagram on where we overlap is so thin that it's like, we kind of have that Thanksgiving dinner type of mentality with so many people, right? Don't bring it up. I just don't, leave your uncle alone. Don't even engage. And that's kind of unfortunate, right? How can we as a society advance if we can't even meet on some common ground?
Yeah. As you're saying this, I'm thinking about, some of these challenges are, at the very least, getting people to wrap their heads around the idea that science isn't a set of facts, rather it is a method of pursuit of information. It's a method of discovering knowledge. The facts or the probabilities that are discovered through that are always open to adjustment and better information as that better information comes along. And it's that kind of nuance that I hope takes some of the reactionary issues around it out of it. But then I think, do you think that some people are just sort of too far gone? Like if you ask somebody, what would change your mind on this? And if the answer is nothing, okay, well, then there is no discussion to be had. I would hope that the right answer is, what would change your mind? Well, better evidence of a thing is what would change my mind.
Yeah, it's so funny to me. Whenever you kind of captured it so nicely. Someone like a climate denier will say to a scientist, well, are you 100% certain in man-made climate change? And we say, well, no, we're not 100% certain. We're certain to 99.9% with all the data. And they say, exactly. You're not sure, but I am. I'm sure that that's not. Well, yeah, your sure is different than mine. Yours is ignorance, right? That's something you don't get to be naive and say, well, then we're tied, right? So yeah, I feel like the key word here is falsifiability. If someone admits to me outright, my opinion cannot be falsified, nothing will change my mind. Okay, yeah, I'm very busy, so thank you for telling me. Right? But anyone that says to me, I would need to see this, they issue the challenge to me. Then all of a sudden I feel compelled, right? The scientist in me says, I've got research to do. I have to find the thing that could be that domino that kind of starts them towards the path of a more scientific understanding.
Since you mentioned climate change, Matthew has a great question here. He says, what are some small steps people can take in their everyday lives to help combat climate change? Is it reusable bags, using less single-use plastic, driving less? I love that question because this just seems like such an overwhelming thing. And it is truly up for debate. Like, what are the best steps to take? Where are you on this?
Sure. I promise not to be too soapboxy, right? The Canadian in me is very like, we have to make big changes. We're far. But I do want to be positive about it. I think we have to be positive and not pessimistic. Absolutely, of course. Reusable bags. I see a lot of schools doing amazing things like getting rid of disposable cutlery for school lunches and things like this. I think that's great. Universities in California are issuing utensils to incoming freshmen and then not having utensils at the dining hall. Again, just trying to reduce that plastic waste. Meat intake is a huge one, as Holly will be happy to hear. So cutting down your meat intake, which I try to do. I'm not a vegetarian, but even just reduction can be a big one. But I will admit, if you really want to change your carbon output, you need to vote. Because what your carbon output as a human, as a single private citizen, is nothing compared to the industry. Right. And I kind of have to laugh at the marketing. The genius of it is all these companies saying, hey, get to work. You should clean up a little bit. It's like, hold up, buddy. That chemical plant of yours sure is putting out a lot of CO2. The planes that we fly put out more in a flight than I do all year. So, I think we as a society need to drive change at higher levels. So your best personal contribution can be perhaps being part of a larger movement.
I also feel like, and please correct me if I'm wrong here because I'm about to pull out my soapbox. With climate change being such it has been such a flashpoint issue for decades now, and it feels like we're not getting closer. And every time there's a step forward, there's two steps back. But it feels like those political divisions at both ends are so detrimental to the actual cause, where you've got one end saying, well, no, fossil fuels work, we just need to keep using those and not only use them, but use more. And then you've got another end saying, well, no, we have to just wholesale get rid of all of that, but we're also going to throw out other things like, say, nuclear as an option. And I was just listening to another podcast the other day that was sort of making the case that if you look at, particularly in the US, the division of what types of energy we have, so between fossil fuels or coal, natural gas, nuclear, solar, etc., that our best bets for like the next 10 years, and then 10 years after that, and then 10 years after that, are to keep using all of those, but make shifts along those lines. So more natural gas in the meantime, while we're building better nuclear plants that in 10 or 20 years are not only safer than what we have now, but can actually use some of the spent fuel from those nuclear plants that are 20 or 30 years old now. Like all of this needs to be part of the solution, not just an extreme at either end. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, I mean, what a genius idea to have a little bit of forethought and strategy at play. And instead of this kind of reactionary sensationalist idea that we have to burn everything to the ground or burn twice as much just to get back at another organization. No, like, why don't we just have a plan forward? And again, when we talk about a scientific versus a political one, you made a great scientific argument, right? What would output look like? What would efficiency look like? What would infrastructure look like as we transition? We'll never be Iceland, right? We're not going to have hydrothermal vents powering the United States.
Iceland is so good at everything.
Yeah, if only we could be, right? But we can make a transition. And, in place of that, again, we have a political argument. There's a great book that I love called Merchants of Doubt. And it's about how, have you read this?
Yeah.
How marketing, and effectively the same marketing campaign that pushed that smoking didn't kill people, right? That the ozone layer wasn't being damaged. Those are the same people who are funding climate change isn't real. It's the same organization. And, you kind of have to say to yourself, well, follow the money here. Is it a science argument or is it a political argument?
Yeah. Switching topics just a moment here. Somebody in our audience wants to know, who's your favorite Trek scientist?
Two people actually want to know
Two
this.
people
Sam and Dominic
this.
both want to know who your favorite Trek scientist is.
Man, why did I not predict that was going to be the question? No.
I thought you'd say Dax.
I think I'm leaning towards Dax. Dax.
Which one?
Right. Yeah,
God.
The good one. The good one. Yeah.
Oh, shade.
I will admit that the favorite scientist is also colored by the fact that she was just so smoking hot. That woman of power thing that does it for old Brandon. So Jadzia really scientist, confident woman. Really, that was the sweet spot for young Brandon for sure.
Maybe
that's why I majored in science. Maybe I was like, oh, Jadzia, you're out there.
That could be. That could very well be. And Alan says, so not Curzon. Okay. Yeah, I think. Yeah. And Paul Wright says,
I told you a little something about myself.
Yeah. And Paul too says, hey, don't bash my girl Esri. So
Esri just didn't get enough. She was in the last season. They shoved in so many storylines to explain her. The
heat of like just the crescendo of DS9 and all of that dark, morally ambiguous conflict that was at play, and then to just here's Peter Pan all of a sudden in the midst of the audience. You know?
Esri's not a scientist. Also, she's a chemist.
That's true.
Yeah.
But she's carrying around partly the mind of a scientist. So
Social
good
scientist.
point.
We'll give it.
Yeah. There you go. I want to bring this back to. So I told you earlier that I watched this TEDx talk that you gave, and I would encourage people in our audience to go look it up. It's on YouTube. And you gave this speech to a Temple City high school class in 2018, and you hit a bunch of scientific topics, and you were talking about science denialism and conspiracy and how those feed beliefs like flat earth and moon landing hoaxers and climate change denial. And I'm just watching this going, oh man, thank goodness there is your voice there in that classroom. And that was 2019. And that
18.
is 2018. Yeah. And this is before COVID hit.
Yeah.
And I feel like we were in rough shape then. Are we in worse shape now? Like what is has your method or your concerns about science education, have those shifted in the last couple of years at all?
Yeah, I really Nostradamus that one for the worst, right? That was that was the wrong direction. Yeah, it terrifies me. It truly does. I think that's why, again, I'm so passionate about education. Is that we really do have a choice. We can become idiocracy or we can become Star Trek, right? And I see a divergence there that worries me. When we think about what would inspire youth now in terms of science, we see what I call space tourism, right? This is not the same thing as the shuttle days or the Apollo days, right? This is it feels almost ego driven, right? Who's the next one on there, right? And look, super glad to see Shatner make the trip. That's awesome, right? But that's a PR awesome thing. That doesn't advance science. And so I just kind of worry, like, what is the message that is pro-science that we're sending now? What's going to be that defining chapter, like the shuttle days was in my youth, right? And I don't see it yet. I want it to be there, but I don't see that same kind of, galvanizing scientific mission that's going to rally the team and be part of this generation's call.
You kind of answered what was going to be my next question, which is, what do you have your eye on? Like, is there something in 2 years or 5 years or 10 years that you feel like, ooh, that is the scientific story to watch? And I think you're making a very good case for saying that, yeah, I mean, I totally agree with you. Every time we send up somebody in a private spacecraft, that's good for PR, but is it really driving exploration or scientific knowledge any further? It's sort of a very loose case to be made for that. It gets people watching a launch rather than watching something else for a minute, and hopefully see some lovely pictures of the Earth from space, but eventually that will become less exciting too, So
Yeah.
So is there something? I know you said there isn't, but is there anything that you think like, ooh, well, maybe in a few years it's this?
Yeah, not yet. But I do have hope. I think that I'm really excited for upcoming explorations from NASA around places like Europa and Enceladus.
The Europa Clipper.
This I think could be the start of something really, really great. So, if for people who aren't familiar, in our solar system, just in our local neighborhood, there are two moons of Saturn and Jupiter that are quite literally floating oceans in space, right? Europa has more water on it than all of Earth. So there are just giant balls of water floating in space right now. And we know that they, could effectively host life. They could, we don't know, but imagine what this would do. Imagine what this would do for science if we were able to detect even the smallest organism, algae or bacteria or anything like that. And we were able to say life not only exists off of Earth, but it exists multiple times in our tiny, tiny solar system. How much more could that life exist across the universe?
I'd like
this
to
would
find a
change
space whale.
everything.
I want to find a space whale.
I'm gonna find a space
Yeah.
whale.
Yeah, you can do
Kind of
your
a large
Star Trek-
organism to hope for, but
You know,
heart whales.
I would take a little warpy tardigrade at this point and be pretty excited.
Yeah.
So that would just open the window for, again, like think how much attention would go to the stars if you could say to yourself, if life is here, then it's got to be out there too.
I would like to think that. And by the way, I want to go back here to a comment that is in our chat. Carlos said, when I was sort of talking about whether or not we're in better or worse shape as far as science education and science understanding in the public at large, he says, we aren't in worse shape now. COVID shined a bright light and all the roaches are coming out. Huh. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean that's not a bad take, right? You know, I think we are defined by what we do at our most difficult moments. And if you're the kind of person who's breaking into stores and stealing toilet paper, right, then you were probably not a great person beforehand either. Yeah, so you might be right about that. But you know, who knows? Like I said, I try. Some days are harder than others to maintain a semblance of optimism. And, you know, just to kind of go back to this point, if we do see life, if we see something that rallies us, we can grow, we can develop. We don't have to wait for Vulcans to come find us. Let's do science right. Let's go explore and, you know, potentially go find life first.
When you talk about that positive outcome, that hopeful look at the future, you know, you're the one out there talking to students on a regular basis. So what happens after that? Do you reach the 1 out of 100 that we were talking about before? Do you hear from them later? Are they given the opportunities and the resources to then go into scientific fields? Like, your speeches are great. Then what?
Yeah, most definitely. Well, I'm so fortunate because since I do get to teach, I'm still teaching. I teach AP Physics at a high school here in LA. Yeah, you not only do you reach the 1 in 100, which, you know, by the way, that's not bad. That's not bad. You reach them in unsuspecting places. So, you know, I want, you know, any educator listening to this or any parent maybe concerned about their kid. I was a monster in my youth, just an absolute.
This is what I said about an interesting background. The way that you got into science.
Oh, I mean,
interesting.
What a truly abominable force I was, right?
Wait. Side story here. I want examples.
Oh, I mean, getting in fights, getting suspended, you know, just also drinking, trouble, you know, just really, really bad. And it's important, right? That it's a marathon. It's a marathon. So when I say you reach that 1 in 100, it's not the brightest kid and you take them from an A to an A+. It can be a kid who was going to drop out of high school, or maybe has something going on at home and their grades are really bad, and you have to kind of piece together why that might be. So you can make a gradual change. You make an impact. That change might actually, you know, grow into something later. And I know that from very personal experience. I was very, very lucky to get into the college I went to and kind of have a career shift because I was going down a very different path. So I try to keep, like I said, just try to keep hope. You try to believe that if I can do it, these kids can do it. And you just got to believe and give them the opportunity.
What are the scientific topics that you think need the most attention now? I mean, whether it's where research dollars are headed at this moment, or for that next generation who are coming up, who will be in those positions in 10 or 20 years?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, clearly the exploration of our solar system for certain. But I will say, if you want to hook a kid on science, and I think to some degree the public too, you know, when you look at how many people read the books from, you know, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or who's another one that everyone's reading right now. Well, it doesn't matter. These kind of like literary science communicators, they're not talking about what we know. We're talking about what we don't, right? The mysteries yet to be solved, dark matter, dark energy, the Big Bang, the origin of the universe, those types of things. When I ask a kid about dark matter and they're looking for an answer, and I say, you know about this just as much as I do, that's a much more motivating thing to bring kids to science than being like, I know all the answers, you better catch up, right? That's nothing very engaging about saying, I'm smarter than you, catch up, kid. But what if, right? What if we figure this out? How would this change the world? Those types of things, I think, are where we really want to push kids toward.
One of our listeners in the chat here, Rand, welcome, Rand, good to see you, says, the cynical part of me would be afraid of finding sentient life on another planet only to discover Earth is the hostile invading aliens.
I've thought about that too.
Yeah.
Right? This is the old response to the Fermi paradox, right? If they're out there, why haven't they come to us? Because we're jerks. That's why. No one wants to hang out with you, right? There's an old webcomic. Forgive me, I wish I could remember the reference, but they said if you saw a group of primates amassing guns and nuclear weapons, would you drop by? Yeah. So the kind of response I have is, if we want to find alien life, we should try to inhabit another planet. Once we effectively demonstrate that we are a virus, I imagine good-willed alien life will come out of the woodworks and be like, stop right there. You guys are not allowed. You are grounded. That might be the best way to bring them out.
Well, let me pose that a slightly different way, because, as somebody who definitely grew up as a NASA fan, and I have family who worked for NASA, and that's just part of, look, drinking out of a NASA water bottle tonight. It's all around me, right? There's still the question in the back of my mind that lingers, which is, are we better off spending money on those things that push our exploration away from Earth, or should we be more concerned about fixing things here? Because if we can't terraform Earth back to a relatively pollution-free, habitable place for generations to come, for the next few thousand years, then what right or interest do we have in trying to do that to a planet that is, not sustainable now?
Yeah.
How would you answer that?
So what I'm gonna do is quickly take off this NASA hat, right, and put on Brandon the private citizen hat.
Okay, all right, it was a good looking hat, but go ahead. Yeah.
So let me, of course, as a NASA employee, I have no complaints about where government spending is going. However, as a taxpayer, what you contribute to NASA is a fraction of a cent per year in your tax dollars, right? If you're worried about space exploration money, you must keep a much tighter budget than I do. What we spend on other things like gas and oil subsidies, the military, and so forth, this vastly outweighs what we spend in NASA research. I'll also say that NASA research comes back to the people, not just because it pays for salaries for scientists and engineers, but the technology we develop, like the instrument MOXIE, which is on Mars right now, which actually takes the CO2 out of the Martian atmosphere and turns it into breathable oxygen, right? That's the kind of demonstration of technology that could be used here on Earth. Maybe that could be used to, as you called it, terraform and clean up our planet. So we spend money on technology that is not just for space, but it's technology you can bring back home. And in that sense, I feel like it's a real win-win.
Carlos in the chat says, why not both? And I feel like when people make that argument, like, why are we doing things in space when we have problems on Earth? Those things are not mutually exclusive. Like, we can do both at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's very taco meme. Why not both? Like, I don't understand why people are so dead set on it being one or the other when we can do all of the things at the same time.
Well, and I think
I find with those people too, I'm like, well, what do you drive? Right? Like, how much beef did you eat today? When was the last time you were on a plane? Right? Like, yeah, we are not number one on the list of tightening the belt.
Right. By the way, you were mentioning Neil deGrasse Tyson. Shout out here in the chat from Sam for Brian Cox. another terrific science communicator. And, you know, obviously these are skills that you so clearly illustrated that there are great scientific minds, but then there are also great scientific minds that need to communicate these ideas to other people. And as we say goodbye here for the night, thank you so much for doing what you do and communicating those great ideas to people who need to hear it and inspiring a generation to come after you to do even more. So,
no, thank you so much for having me. And of course, everyone, please check out the JPL website. If you search JPL Education, you'll find all of the activities, the videos, and how you can get NASA and JPL in your classroom. We have tons of free merch for students and teachers. So please reach out anytime.
Maybe Chicago? Maybe
Ooh.
Star Trek Chicago?
yeah.
Here's hoping.
All right. You heard it here first. So hopefully that'll happen. All right. Well, with that, Mission Log Live is produced by Roddenberry Entertainment, executive producer Rod Roddenberry. Technical production on Mission Log and Mission Log Live provided by the intentional Earl Green. Be sure to visit podcast.roddenberry.com for the latest from Roddenberry Podcasts. If you'd like to support Mission Log directly, give us a look at patreon.com/missionlog. Thank you to everyone who joined us live or later. Stay safe, stay healthy. We look forward to talking with you next week.
This is a Roddenberry podcast. For more great podcasts, visit podcast.roddenberry.com.